Poker Face, the delightful murder mystery show that won everyone's heart in 2023, is coming back for a second season. The first season was full of whimsy and found warmth and humor in unusual places in the heartland of America. It was full of cute details that made the whole show a labor of love, which translated to the final product. How many of them did you catch? The show was inspired by old detective show Columbo, in which the eponymous detective solves murders. Columbo is famous for presenting the audience with an inverted detective story, how catch them rather than a whodunit, which presents the murderer to begin with and then shows how the detective figures out what happened. Columbo, much like Natasha Lyonne's Charlie, was a disheveled, smoking charmer, a person of the people. And Poker Face paid a further homage to the show by using a similar credits design. Episode 1, Dead Man's Hand. People not familiar with Columbo would naturally be confused by the narrative structure in the first episode, as was I, where we essentially see the murder and then go back in time to see how Charlie fits in with everything. The show cleverly tried to help out by showing our heroes watching Pulp Fiction on an iPad, a film that is famously presented out of chronological order. To add to the fun, they have chosen to show the scene where Jules, Samuel L. Jackson's character, talks about wandering the earth, very much what Charlie ends up doing for an entire season. Episode 2, The Night Shift. As we settle in the format, we get another helping hand from the show, namely Charlie's theme. Whenever we're about to see Charlie for the first time in an episode, we get this musical cue. After a few episodes, you'll be ready to see an old friend whenever you hear it. Also in this episode, we get this shot of the murderer, Jed, getting some help on his wound from Charlie. I can't help but think that this framing was intentional to nod to classic Hitchcock thriller Psycho, where, spoiler alert, murderer Norman Bates was seen hanging out under dead birds quite often. Fun fact, those were the same birds as the one that Hitchcock used in his later film, Birds. No, that's not true. Episode 3, The Stall. This episode is a fan favorite, what with the Maga dog and all that delicious looking barbecuing. It has several nice touches. The murderer, Taffy, uses a memory stick to load his pre-recorded audio onto the station's computer to establish his alibi. The icon that appears on the screen when he attaches the stick is the face of a Tengu demon, who in Japanese folklore are considered as evil spirits and harbingers of war. The catalyst, of course, for the murder is Charlie herself, once he gives the victim a choice of DVDs because he, quote, likes animals. The choice is Babe, Charlotte's Web, and Okja. And let's just say that it's no wonder that the guy turned vegetarian straight away, which unfortunately led to his untimely demise. Episode 4, Rest in Metal. Episode 4, aka the metal episode, is another fun favorite, but I guess maybe they all are? The coolest thing about this one, I think, is the green M&M's gag. Ruby Ruin, the front woman, is seen removing green M&M's from a big bowl of M&M's in her dressing room at the final venue. This is surely an homage to Van Halen, who famously requested in their contract rider that they were provided with a bowl of M&M's with all brown M&M's removed from it. This was considered as one of those typical rock star over-the-top requests. However, as it turns out, Van Halen would do this as a way of checking whether the venues had actually read their contract and complied with the various technical and safety requests. That's so metal. Also, if you're thinking that the guitarist is pretty good with that thing, it's actually because he is the primary singer-songwriter of the American band The Mountain Goats. They are more indie folk than metal though. There's another very sweet Easter egg. At the record label, we see on the screen a list of the top 5 podcasts by weekly reach. That is to show us the top podcast, Murder Girl, who will be involved with solving the case. On the screen there are also 3 quite realistic fakes and 1 very successful real podcast called You Must Remember This. This is a podcast of Karina Longworth discussing tales of old Hollywood, and is an absolute gem. Karina Longworth is the spouse of the creator of Poker Face, Ryan Johnson, or as I'd like to call him, Mr. Karina Longworth. If you're even a little bit interested in stories about how old films were made in Hollywood, or just about interesting stories to be honest, told in an exciting and thoughtful way, definitely listen to it. Mailheads, let me know if I've missed anything in this episode, I'm pretty sure I must have. Episode 5, Time of the Monkey. This one, with the ladies at the retirement community, is a bit divisive, if only because they appear pretty badass to begin with, only to be proven to be extremely murderous. When I saw them first, I thought, Law and Order reunion, as both Asa Patha Murkison and Judith Light, aka The Boss, were in the Law and Order franchise. Murkison was a precinct captain, and Light was a judge. However, they were actually in different shows and never crossed paths, despite both those shows having literal hundreds of episodes. It was also pretty brilliant, I think, how the show used two different actors to portray the young Gabriels, aka the cult-type leader that betrayed our two our two killers. There is a hot Gabriel listed in the IMDb credits and a real Gabriel, the real one being significantly less alluring than the recollections of the two murder killers. Last but not least, I can't believe that Fjord of Blood, the title of the fictional Scandi drama the Fletchers are watching, was not meant to sound and look a bit like the classic Kurosawa film Throne of Blood. And yes, in case you missed it, it was a Skarsgård. Episode 6, Exit Stage Death. The theatre episode feels like an episode where everyone in the production team had a lot of fun. Firstly, the two murderers, with a very love and hate vibe, were named Michael and Kathleen, after Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner, who made a meal being belligerent lovers in no less than 3 films: Romancing the Stone, The Jewel of the Nile, and The War of the Roses. Then there is the play itself, Ghosts of Pensacola, which is reminiscent of everyone's favourite southern play without actually being real. It's definitely bringing to mind The Glass Menagerie by Tennessee Williams, and also All My Sons by Arthur Miller, as well as a little bit of Noises Off. But the fun didn't stop there. We see evidence of several more plays that would have been produced on the stage of the Seneca Lake Dinner Theatre, but unfortunately only one of them was saved in the editing room, namely Frankly Franklin, a musical about Benjamin Franklin that is not at all a spoof of Hamilton. Other hits that would have been included have survived as posters: Epidose the Musical, and an all-white cast of The Wiz. Also, originally, it was planned that we would see the arrests of the murderers, but Ellen Barkin killed that monologue, so it was decided, wisely I think, to end the episode there, a la Black Swan or The Wrestler. Episode 8, The Orpheus Syndrome. The Orpheus Syndrome, aka the episode with the visuals effects guru, must be among the best of the show, and it is chock full of fun details. It was co-written and directed by Natasha Lyonne herself, and it is, per creator Rian Johnson, a love letter to Phil Tippett, who, much like Nick Nolte's character, specializes in creature design, stop motion, and computerized character animation. Phil Tippett, who famously said, "I've just become extinct," when he was told that Steven Spielberg would use CGI dinosaurs instead of Tippett's go-motion ones, has won Oscars and general acclaim for his creations. Fittingly, Tippett actually took part in the filming of the episode. He was heavily involved in the Star Wars films, and it cannot be an accident that the division of Lucasfilm that created the visual effects for Star Wars is called ILM, very similar to the fictional LAM movie studio of the episode. The L in LAM is the killer of the episode, Laura, and if she looks familiar, it is because Cherry Jones' character was inspired, according to costume designer Tracy G.G. Field, by iconic villainess Cruella de Vil. She was to be perfectly dressed, sinister, oh so chic. But wait, there's more! Remember those two randoms who spot Caligula's horse? It is actually Sean Ono Lennon and his partner Charlotte Kemp Mule, and that horse was actually featured in... No, I don't think the horse was famous. Finally, and again I'm sure I must have missed a few things, there are several nods to another Hitchcock classic, Vertigo. Both the opening murder and Laura's descent to madness bring to mind that timeless classic. Episode 9, Escape from Shit Mountain. The snow episode is another episode contending to be the best of the season. Certainly it's one that upped the tension. This one had oodles of the classic thriller of The Shining, shining through. There's ample mountainous snowy views. They're both set at the Colorado mountains. And there's Charlie waking up from being left for dead and saying, "I've always been the caretaker," much like Jack Nicholson's character. Of course, book lovers may appreciate references to Magic Mountain, which also happens to be one of the cornerstones of German literature, by Nobel laureate Thomas Mann. In general, all the guests on this show have been stellar, award-winning actors, so there's no point in playing the 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon game, but I would be amiss not to point that Joseph Gordon-Levitt has collaborated with Rian Johnson in one way or another 9 times, most notably in Looper and Brick, but also in The Last Jedi. And if you struggle to remember what role Gordon-Levitt played in that one, he was this guy. Episode 10, The Hook. Season finale, twist after twist. Lots of goodies in this one too. For example, Benjamin Brat slowly recites the entire third verse of The Hook by Blues Travelers in a slow monologue, as if he's reciting from the Bible or Shakespeare, and it's the scariest thing he's done on this show, and he's killed some people. But this isn't the only Hook reference we get. Charlie's niece is watching the movie Hook on TV while giving her doll a perm with an oddly shaped hot roller. We also get another super frequent collaborator given a prominent role, in this case Clea Duvall, a longtime friend of Natasha Lyonne, playing Charlie's estranged sister instead of her lover, which she usually portrays. Natasha Lyonne, for anyone who isn't aware, is not a lesbian, despite being an absolute lesbian icon. There's another small thing, it's more of a coincidence than anything else, but it's cute. The baddie of the season, who turned out not to be that bad anyway, was casino owner Ron Perlman. He met his demise, but unfortunately this was not the end of Charlie's wanderings, as another casino owner has Charlie in her sights now. Another super actor, Rhea Perlman. The two Perlmans are not related and have only spoken a few times, according to Rhea Perlman, but who knows, maybe they have a common ancestor somewhere in the past. Finally, I love the scene where Charlie breaks her phone and throws it down the road. It mimics the scene from the first episode, where she does the exact same thing while drinking a beer, signifying that she has to get back on the road again. And that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if you spotted something I've missed. And yes, you might have spotted I didn't have anything for episode 7, the racing episode. But that's because I couldn't come up with anything other than it reminded me of the Tom Cruise racing film, Days of Thunder. And if you haven't watched that one, don't. If you enjoyed this, I hope you leave a like and maybe consider subscribing. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.